A burnt out entrepreneur is somebody who is constantly saying, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know where to start. I feel like there's just so much to do. I'm so busy. I haven't taken a vacation in years.
In today's episode, Courtney and I had the pleasure to sit down with the biz Dr. Lauren Goldstein. Lauren is the founder and CEO of the award-winning and globally recognized business consulting firm Golden Key Partnership. She's going to be talking about the difference between an owner, owner-operator, owner-leader, how to go from chief everything officer to an effective CEO, the importance of clarity, having the right A players within your business, products, processes, people, the difference between scale and growth. This episode is absolutely amazing. So with that being said, let's start the show. Hey, welcome to the Insurance Buzz. We are your hosts, Michael and Courtney Weaver, and we have a very special guest today, Lauren Goldstein. Lauren, how are you?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me.
We are so excited.
Lauren is in Austin, Texas, and we were talking about how hot it is. It's about to get hotter on this podcast.
We're about to drop it like it's hot up in here, all right?
It's going to get hot.
Yes.
So
yes.
I'm going to jump right in because when I was reading your bio, you talked a lot about working with entrepreneurs and your clients really with their mental health and how that affects their business and their performance. So when somebody comes to you, when a client comes to work with you, what are they saying?
Oh, generally they're saying a lot of things, but I think the most common things I hear are, why is so much still falling on me when I have a team? Am I ever going to be able to get out from underneath my business and have a vacation where I don't have to worry about things? Do I want to create a lifestyle business or a legacy business or sell a business? And then sometimes they come to me because they just aren't sure where their time should be because they feel like they're playing whack-a-mole every single day with their business. And they're like, there just has to be a better way. And I don't know if I can sustain this level of burning the candle at both ends for much longer.
So how did you start into this work? I want to backtrack a little bit before we give the answer of what you say, of how you got here.
Yeah. I don't know how detailed you want, so I'll give you the medium length version. So many years ago, I was in the medical field. I was going to be a doctor, and I worked in pediatric neurology and epilepsy research. And I'd done everything right. You know, I did all the schooling, all the things. And then we had a little baby come in that we treated. And then the insurance company came back and said, we're not going to pay for her continued treatment. And I just had this moment of what the heck? Like, what the heck am I doing in a field that doctors can't do what's best for patients because insurance companies are dictating patient care? And I just saw my life flash before my eyes and said, I don't want to go down this road anymore. I want to help people, but this doesn't feel aligned to me anymore. And so I left. And to be honest, I felt a little bit like a cork in an ocean because that was all I knew for almost a decade. And so I remember doing all the things, hiring Tony Robbins, reading every self-help book and business book. And I had, a lot of great mentors. And I remember crying into my grits one day and my mentor said, you should be a consultant. And I looked at him like he had 5 heads because I had no idea what that meant. And 12 years ago, being a consultant was not something that was cool or that people did. If you were a consultant, you worked for the Big Four. But of course, I believed what he was saying because he's a multi-millionaire, many-time over business owner. And so I said, tell me more why you think that. And he said, well, just like when you were diagnosing tiny humans, the way that you solve problems and see connections and diagnose businesses could be really valuable for somebody from the outside looking in. And so I said, well, I'm not sure I have very much business experience outside our family business, but I'll give it a try. And gosh, those first 5 years, I think I wanted to quit every other day, because it was a uphill battle to try and get through my itty bitty shitty committee that was on my shoulder telling me I had no business doing this. But then eventually, my clients started having more and more success, and I felt like I got my sea legs. And here we are 12 years later.
I love it. That's a heck of a journey.
So did you immediately jump into, you said you were having kind of a struggle with the business ownership. Did you start there? Like, how did you end up diagnosing entrepreneurs and business owners?
Oh, no. I wish it was that simple. No, I probably did what every business owner does when they first start. And I thought I needed to do all the things. So if my client was like, can you do this? I was like, not today, but I will go YouTube for 5 hours and figure out how to do that. And so those first few years were a lot of a mile wide and an inch deep versus being a mile deep and an inch wide. And I think the common thread, if I look back on all the years, so I didn't say this, but my degree is in cognitive neuroscience, which is why mental health of entrepreneurs is so important to me. And I would say the common thread that I was seeing time and time again with what wasn't working in a business was it was either the CEO, what I call the CEO mindset of understanding the difference between being an operator and an owner, and actually deciding if you want to be an owner instead of an operator. And then the other component was like a little bit kind of how I had an identity crisis when I left the medical field. One of the things that I see stop a lot of business owners is this identity crisis when they give up the doing, and suddenly they're like, who am I? What am I doing in this business? Am I contributing? Do I have value? And then there's like this existential crisis where they go from thinking they want true entrepreneurial freedom to like clawing themselves back into the business, which can create a lot of chaos.
Shit, Lauren, you're hitting on something that I have been dealing with. All right, like the control monster, the do it all monster. Like we have an amazing CEO, and this has been something I personally have like really been working through over the last 12 months, and I've had a breakthrough the last 2 or 3 months, but it's still something that I'm like, I know I'm supposed to delegate this to you, and I know you're better at it than I am, but I can do it. I can do it.
I mean, sure, you could, but should you be doing it?
No. I know.
It's tough.
Oh my goodness. Like
I know. I was waiting for you to be like, okay, wait a minute. Where's the bell? Like when you buy a boat, they like ring a bell. Like that's what I need right now. Because that feeling, that identity shift. So like you said in the very beginning, when a business owner comes to you and they're like, my team, where do I fit in this whole machine? So somebody comes to you to work with you, and they're running through what Michael's going through and I'm not going to exclude myself because I've had many different coats that I've worn, identities that I've worn that I'm like, okay, I'll try this on for a little bit. What's kind of the first step that you're like, okay, I need to triage, I need to assess, where do we go first?
So, I mean, I take them through our signature diagnostic, which generally covers their people, their processes, and their profits to figure out, where are the concentrated risks, where are the revenue cliffs, how are operations fitting the business instead of trying to fit the business into various and sundry different systems, like a round peg, square hole. And then, of course, how are we building the right team for you? Because what I've found a lot over the years is we're really good at recruiting ourselves and saying, probably, in my opinion, the worst thing you can say of, I just need to clone myself. And then you have the blind leading the blind. So when it comes to triaging the business, I first have to figure out what isn't working, and are the symptoms that we're seeing, whatever they might be, the result of something surface level, because sometimes that's the case, but a lot of times it's actually something that's much more at the root. So is it, I laugh because I gave a talk last week and they all kind of nervously giggled when I said this of like, does your team actually know what your company vision is and goals? Or like you just keeping that to yourself and hoping that they can read your mind? Because sometimes it's a lack of clarity about where the business is going. That's one of the things that could be causing this dysfunction and symptoms in the business. Sometimes it's you haven't made the decision to get out from under your business and you're kind of, as my father would say, trying to ride two horses with one ass.
I know that phrase well. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Or sometimes it's just that you haven't slowed down enough to understand that there's a shift in how you operate, how you lead, how you build your business when you're not the operator. And that does take a certain mindset and ability to let go of control and trust that who you have is going to be able to pick up the slack when you're not there.
So how do you take kind of this bird's eye view, this step back without your business taking a step back?
My business or their business?
The people that you're working with, business owners. Yeah.
Got it. Yes. So that is obviously one of our priorities of not throwing like a huge rock in the pond, but rather just like gently getting into the water and seeing how deep it is. So the way that I've structured it is when you're doing your diagnostic, what it actually is asking you to do is like downshift, kind of like if you're going up a grade or down a grade, you have to downshift. It doesn't mean you're necessarily going slower. It just means you're taking a breath. Because there's some things that I've seen, and actually one of my friends, Cameron, refers to them as seagull leaders, which are the leaders that come in, poop all over everything, and then fly away. And so like what we're trying to do is stop that train, because a lot of the business owners that I work with are so creative and so excited about life that they just get the shiny object syndrome and then they're pulling the team in one way or another. So it might seem like we're slowing down the business, but actually what we're doing is we're just downshifting so that we can bring more clarity and flow back to it. And then once we have that, then we upshift again. Did that answer your question?
It did. Yeah. That was incredible.
No, and what you're hitting on is so, I mean, like I said, like it's something that as you build and grow, I think that this is part of the growth that a CEO, maybe some experience it naturally, but I know this is just part of the growth that I've had to experience, and the growth has been extremely uncomfortable. So for someone maybe getting into this uncomfortable stage of wanting to grow or scale their business, and they begin to hire either the executive admin or CEO, what would you tell them is a good like ABC steps 1, 2, 3 to go through to make sure that they are able to delegate and try to not go through the process that I've had to go through of, hey, I want that back. Hey, I'm going to do this because I can do it faster. Or there's multiple ways you can say that.
Yeah. So I think the first step, and we do a lot of this through our scorecard, which is essentially like the dashboard for a role. Because I don't know if you've ever struggled with this, but I got tired of chasing stuff around Google Drive and different computers, like job descriptions and monthly reviews and quarterly reviews and all of that. And so over the past 12 years, I've created this document that took the best components out of various frameworks and put it all in one place. And so the first place that I would start is with what I would call a task transition. Try saying that 5 times fast. Where you literally, and it's honestly one of the things that probably my clients dislike the most, but it's so informative. You take a week and you start writing down everything you're doing. And you're also writing down, like, how is it making you feel? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Is it something only you could do? If you outsourced it, how much would you outsource for it? And like get really clear on what you're doing and then break it down into buckets. Like, is this an operational thing? Is this a team thing? Is this a leadership thing? Marketing? You get the idea. That way you can start to see patterns of things that are making you feel stuck or keeping you stuck, etc. And then step 2 is really getting clear. I know I keep like clarity is is the first of my, there's 7 total, 7 C's of a high performing team. But clarity is something that I will keep coming back to, because if you're not clear about what you want from the business and where you want the business to go, then you're going to potentially discover that your ladder is leaning up against the wrong wall. So with our scorecard, for example, it's designed so that it thinks about a 360 view of the role. So you've got the mission. How does it fit in? What's the one thing? What problem is it solving? What traits does somebody need to have to be successful in this role? What are the accountabilities? What are the threats and interdependencies? And I know it sounds like a lot of stuff, but it's actually very simple once you start to think about, like, do I want to be, because there's 3 types of business owners. There's an owner operator, and then there's an owner leader. And so deciding what one you want to be is going to help you down the road and make sure that if you don't want to be that owner leader, that you do hire the right CEO. If you don't want to have any sort of operational stuff after a certain point, that you hire the right operational team and the right CEO. And so that's step 2, is like really getting clarity on what you want. And then the third one is a little bit related to both of them, of getting clarity on like what your specific talent is. We use an assessment called the Wealth Dynamics, which is a bit of a misnomer because it makes it seem like it's for financial advisors. It's not. It's just essentially merging East and West and saying, what's your path to being able to flow through your business and life in the best way to create wealth? And so when you get really specific about what your skill set is and what it's not, then you can start building the right team around you and focus in and be that laser instead of a flashlight.
I want you to go into the owner operator, and the owner leader. Like, what separates those 3 things?
So an owner is somebody who's really not involved in the day-to-day unless it's something that's transactional, like you're selling the company, shares, things like that. They really get a passive income or disbursements or something from the business. An owner-operator is an owner who likes to be in the weeds, which, my goal is to help people get out of the weeds. But there are some people that it does not matter how great I am. They're just like, nope, I want to live in the weeds. And I'm like, okay, but you can't be a leader if you're living in the weeds. So they're happy there. So they're the people that really love doing the doing and have very little interest in building the business or being that leader. And then the owner leader is somebody who doesn't really thrive in the weeds, doesn't want to be in the weeds, can drop into the weeds when necessary, but primarily is in that strategic, vision-focused, how can we scale place. And so they're very different, and they require different things of each person, and one is not better than the other, but you just need to be clear which one you want while you're building your team. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Can it evolve? It feels like it can kind of shift as the business shifts too.
Mm-hmm. It absolutely can. Where I've seen it go badly is where somebody really thinks they want to be the owner leader. And so you build the business around them like that. And then all of a sudden they're like, I'm not the right person to lead, and I don't like this, and I don't want this. And then all of a sudden, if you don't have the right, for lack of a better word, middle management, then it creates a really chaotic environment where the business then stalls out because the top is now having a crisis of consciousness.
Yeah.
Conscious? Whatever the word is I'm looking for.
You're throwing all
confidence. That's the word.
You're throwing all the hard words in today. I'm like, how now, brown cow?
Right? I think what I was trying to say is a crisis of confidence.
Yeah.
Is what I was trying to say.
Yeah. I felt what you were saying. I know exactly what you're talking about here.
Yeah, and I do feel your you're right in the question, because I feel like when somebody starts a business, they could be that owner operator, like in the weeds, in the trenches. I know that we have been, and then we've kind of navigated to that owner leader. And maybe one day we do become just a pure owner where everybody else is running the company and it's just kind of rocking and rolling. But that's where do you see that transition typically from maybe a business, either how big they are from a revenue standpoint or even people standpoint, to where individuals do typically make the transition from maybe owner operator to that owner leader or just pure owner?
Yeah, another word or another analogy for an owner operator is a chief everything officer. So I think the line of demarcation is different for every business, but it tends to be when you have, how can I say this? When you have a lack of leverage, like you have more than enough revenue coming in, but you have a lack of time. And so suddenly you're like, I can't put in any more hours. And when you have that moment of like, there has to be something that I can create leverage with, because you can create leverage with products, process, or people. And if you have a highly streamlined product and your processes are pretty good, then that means that it's time to really double down on your people. And I think that is one of the things that sometimes becomes the hardest is understanding what people you need to actually get you farther faster, instead of just getting butts in the seats. Like, you need the right butts in the seats. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
I want to go into processes because a lot of our listeners are entrepreneurs, small business owners. They're running a smaller team. And we transitioned, most owners that I know transitioned from that producer performer role into their owner role. And so when you look at, processes, that can be overwhelming to say, where do I begin? So what are some processes, whether you're just starting out or you've been here for a while, that need to be ironclad in your office, in your business?
So I would say one of the processes that I would recommend be ironclad is the process of delivery. So what happens after they say yes? So that's primarily where I focus, is that back end revenue, that bottom line revenue, to see what's leaking, people or time or all the things. And so I think a lot of times we forget after the yes, like we're so busy getting to the yes that we forget about how much time are we losing on the back end once they say yes. So something that I like to ask my clients and even myself is, what are things we're doing repeatedly over and over and over again? Can we automate it? Can we systematize it? Can we make some sort of process happen that'll make this more efficient? So like, even if it's something like every new client you send out a contract. Is there a way to create a template in HelloSign that just, fills it out and sends it over? And so that's something that's really important, is I think from the moment they say yes to the moment you have that first call, what is that process? Is it seamless? Is it something that's very rinse, wash, repeat, and a known quantity? So that's one. And then the second process that I would say is something that I'm always working on, but like, what happens when you wrap up? Like, is there a way that you're keeping in touch with them? You're staying on the top of their mind for their friends? Because that's something that I look at a lot with my clients. And of course, cobbler's kids' shoes with my own business sometimes. But when you're looking at revenue cliffs, I always ask my clients, well, what comes after you wrap? Is there something else there? Is there a complementary something or other, or a way that you can keep them in your ecosystem? But all in all, if you're feeling overwhelmed by your process, my best advice is to just find one thing that you see either you're explaining your team multiple times, or it's something you're doing multiple times over and over and over again. And just ask yourself, is this something that you can automate that you can systematize, that maybe you can delegate, and just start with one thing and then continue adding as you go. I don't think you have to have all of your processes fixed in the beginning. And you also, here's a myth buster for you, you also don't have to have all of your SOPs written down before you hire. In fact, this is something that I say most often is when you're bringing on those people, that's actually the perfect time for you to start doing those together. Yep. And we use something that I learned in the medical field of see one, do one, teach one. So that's how we onboard. And when I come in as fractional COO, that's how I onboard people. So when you're able to do that with them, then you can release two birds with one key and create those processes together.
Yep.
I think everyone just took a big exhale, like, oh. Because I love that you say that, because especially when you're starting out, you feel like you need the whole roadmap, and it becomes this overwhelming thing of I can't, or that's the thing that's standing in your way of hiring that person is I don't have everything figured out yet.
Yeah.
And you feel like you have to.
Yeah.
Or else you're going to drop the ball, or you're not going to be able to train them properly, or whatever it may be. So that's huge. That's a huge takeaway. All right. I want to talk about scale versus growth, because I know that there is a difference there. And I know this is something that you love to talk about. So scale versus growth, what is the difference?
So in my opinion, the difference is growth is where you are maximizing front end revenue, but you also tend to have a photo finish every month where your revenue goes up, but your expenses grow up as well. So you're just like trying to always keep up. Versus scaling is doing more. I think of it kind of like a fire hose. You're doing more with the same amount of resources. And that's when your profitability starts to really grow and you have that hockey stick moment. And I think a lot of people use growing and scaling interchangeably. And, they say I want to scale, but really they mean growth or vice versa. But it really comes down to doing more with the same resources, or figuring out how you can strategically add a resource here or there that will have the biggest impact on the bottom line.
What do you find in most businesses help with the scale aspect of the business versus the growth aspect of the business?
The simple answer, I guess, is knowing the difference between a player and a worker bee. So a player generally comes with a plan and they create profits, whereas worker bees tend to be people that are very great at what they do, but tend to create double work for you because you're now doing their job as well as, your job as well as their job, trying to think of things for them to do. And their job is a task list versus a player. Their job is profitability, revenue, the project that you've created for them. And so when you're scaling, it's really important to have the right team around you that is profitable and creating that revenue and time back to you versus being a cost.
And I think that that's going to lead where I want to go with vacation as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, and mental health, having the right people that allow you to take a step back. So when you're meeting with somebody, what is the cue of like, girl, you need to take a vacation? Like, you need to take a break. What are the signs of like a burnt out entrepreneur?
Oh man. I mean, there's so many, but I would say a burnt out entrepreneur is somebody who is constantly saying, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know where to start. I feel like there's just so much to do. I'm so busy. I haven't taken a vacation in years. And then there's this sneaky one of like, it's okay. I'll just do it. Like, you don't need to do it. I'll just do it. Like if I start to see, like I laugh more like I'm crying on the inside, but I remember I was with one of my clients that I was fractional COO with. It was me, the CFO, and the CEO in a Slack DM conversation, and something had happened where one of the employees dropped the ball, and the CEO was like, "It's fine, I'll do it." And the CFO, like, I couldn't have timed this better if I tried, was like, "Oh, I get it. So if I don't do my job, you'll just do it for me? And the CEO was like, dang it, I see your point.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he was like, Lauren, you were right. Because we had had that conversation like 3 days before about the way to stop enabling your team is to stop doing their job for them. And so when you're on the verge of burnout, it can be sneaky because you feel like you're just like, you're going to do it better. You can do all the things versus like really saying, I don't have the time. I'm so busy. I feel like I can't get out from underneath. And like that word overwhelm. Anytime I hear overwhelm, that's like one of my cues. But then of course I get to play the biz doctor and help them see that they can take a vacation and it's not going to end up in a smoldering fire of a business. Like one of my clients, she was giving me all of those things. And so I said, I'm going to give you a really uncomfortable to do. Like, here's your homework. And she's like, oh God. And I said, I want you to clear your entire deck for the next week. And she's like, what do you mean? And I said, I want you to clear every single meeting you have on your calendar for the next week. And she looked at me like she was going to vomit. And she's like, I can't do that. I can't possibly do that. And I said, you have to do that. Like, there is no question. You have to do that. And of course, like, you know, we spent the better part of 45 minutes. Like, she was just throwing all the things at me. And I was like Wonder Woman, right? So finally she's like, okay, I can do this. I'm going to throw up. It's going to be fine. And so for a week, she cleared her schedule. She came back the next week and she said, something crazy happened. I said, what happened? And she said, I've never been happier. And I made $30,000. And I said, how? That's so crazy. Why do you think that was? She was like, because I had white space. I said, exactly. So with creative entrepreneurs, which most of us are, it's very important that we're not overscheduled, because if we're overscheduled, then we can't solve the bigger problems of our business. And we also can't be the best part of ourselves for everyone else because we're so constricted. And so while it is very, very tempting to be like, my business can't run without me, I can't take a vacation, or to feel like if you go on vacation, you're going to be so behind. But even if that vacation is 1 day a week, like I take Saturdays and I completely digitally detox, your business will thrive, as will your team. And also you'll figure out what's not working a heck of a lot faster than you trying to duct tape things together.
I feel like I'm being talked to right now. I don't know.
There's a long pause in the podcast for us to like, we're going to wrap it up. We need to have a conversation with Lauren. Because I totally get what you're talking about. We just had to go through this. And I think we're, as high achievers, I think we're always working through this of how do I delegate and not want to jump back in? Or how do I take a step back from something that I'm obsessed with? Like, this is something that I really want to grow. I do have a question about delegation because it is not my favorite thing. I do not like it.
Yeah.
A lot of times as entrepreneurs, we're asked to delegate pretty much everything, even the things that we're really good at. Do you believe in that philosophy? Or do you think we should hang on to the things, like a lot of times it's sales or marketing that we're like, we are the best at this. This is my sweet spot. Do you think we should keep that and keep with maybe top tier clients? Or do you think that's something that we should go ahead and delegate out?
I love this question. So I'm a little bit of a contrarian. I believe you should keep the things that really fill you up, that are working on the business, not in the business. And I will never forget when we were doing a scorecard with a CEO, I was watching him in slow motion. We were all in person, and he like changed his body language, and then he got up and he walked closer to the projector, looked at his scorecard, looked at me, looked at the scorecard, looked at me again, and then crossed his arms. And I said, okay, what's happening here? And he's like, there's only 3 things on my scorecard. That's it. Are you sure this is right? I feel like I should be doing more. This feels uncomfortable. And then he like verbally vomited all the things on me about like, What if I'm not contributing? What if they think I'm slacking, like I'm supposed to be setting the example? And I said, okay, take a breath. Remember, number one, your job as a leader is to develop more leaders. And if you're constantly doing all the things for them, like you're not developing leaders, you're developing worker bees. Number two, your greatest value is in this, this, and this. You also happen to love this, this, and this. So I'm not telling you you can't ever do something else. I mean, I'm going to caution you not to. But if like somebody's out of the office and you have to muck in, that's a different conversation than constantly trying to context switch between all of these things and trying to be a jack of all trades or a unicorn, which we know unicorns don't exist. How sad is that? And so when you're really effective at, like, I'd say a max of 3 things and you like doing them, as long as it's not creating chaos for the team in terms of like you're pulling them on and off different projects and they feel like they're playing whack-a-mole because they're trying to keep up with you, then it's fine. I'm a big believer in we all have our own special talents within our business, and a lot of business owners excel at sales and marketing because that's, you know, what you're good at. I do not excel at sales and marketing, so I will never be that person that's like, I should do this. But operations, teams, like that's my jam. And if I were to pull me out of those things that are my secret sauce, like my business would suffer, my clients would suffer because they don't have my magic. So that's part of what the task transition is that I talked about a little while ago, is if you start to see the things that really light you up, and you can you'll probably see 10 things. Then you get to triage those 10 things and say, what are the 3 that if I only focus on these 3, that they're going to make the biggest difference in the business? Because we can do a lot of doing, but in reality, if the business isn't growing, like it's not evolving and the rate of change inside your business is not greater than the rate of change outside of your business, then you're going to be stagnant, plateaued, etc. So we got to focus where not only do we have the most impact and the most fun, but where are we going to have the most long-term results? Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So Lauren, this has been absolutely fantastic. If someone wanted to connect with you, follow you, what's the best way for them to do that?
So probably the easiest, since I'm currently already in your ears, is to head over to the Biz Doctor podcast and subscribe. I drop a new episode every other week. And you can always find me on LinkedIn or Instagram at It's Lauren Goldstein. And you can also come visit our website, goldenkeypartnership.com, where we've got some great resources, including the scorecard for business owners to help you get out from under your business.
Lauren, thank you so much. We had so much fun with you. Stay cool in Texas, okay? I know.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And I know I'm definitely going to try and stay cool. Whew.
And for all of those of you that are listening, thank you so much for your support. As always, time is the most valuable and important asset that we have. We appreciate you spending time with us today. Go out and make it great. Lauren, thank you again.